The last criteria that we are going to say applies to Virginia Woolf in this movie that fits up under the DSM criteria for depression would be indecisiveness. I am pulling this from the fact that the cooks inferred that she frequently changed her mind. I also saw a few other things that would lead me to believe that her lifestyle was such that she could easily flip-flop back and forth and not make very clear decisions. That would give us 5 distinct criteria that would fit the depression diagnosis and thereby allow us to diagnose Virginia Woolf as being depressed. The first two, of course, we have to have at least one. I claim she has both depressed mood and loss of interest and pleasure. And then after that, we say that she has a sense of worthlessness. And the fourth one is that she has thoughts of death. We could even say suicide attempts are there. And lastly, I say indecisiveness. Now it becomes really crucially important. Can we really call this depression? Let's say, for example, that we looked at adjustment disorder with depressed mood. If we can't make those criteria fit and find at least 5, then we would possibly want to look at adjustment disorder with depressed mood, because she might just be dealing with a psychosocial stressor. I point out once again, though, she's been depressed for quite a while, and that's why it's very important to me to find all 5 of those criteria. Not that all 5 criteria can always be met. Another thing that's going to be very important is if we're going to say she has persistent mood disorder, which is what I really want to diagnose her as, then we have to prove that she never had a manic episode. Let's take a little bit of a look at what a manic episode would entail. It has to be a distinct period, according to the DSM-5 criteria, of abnormal and persistently elevated mood for at least 1 week. The problem here becomes evident. I don't know. I don't have enough facts to know. I see from the movie or from the article we read, I don't really know a lot about her supposed fits, as her husband says. That's the only evidence I know of something that someone could call mania. And I cannot say that she was hospitalized, and I cannot say that she had at least 1 week of this episode. It also tells us in the DSM-5 that at least 3 of the following criteria have to be met for us to call her manic. For us to say her behavior is that would come up under mania. Inflated self-esteem. I don't see that with her at all. Decreased need for sleep. I saw no evidence of that. More talkative than usual. I didn't see that. Flight of ideas or subjective thoughts that are racing. I also did not see that. Distractibility. Okay, we saw a little bit of that when she was in the drawing room with her sister and niece and nephew. So there's 1 for us, but we need 3. Increase in goal-directed activity or psychomotor agitation. I don't see that at all with Virginia Woolf's character in the movie. And lastly, excessive involvement in pleasurable activities. Oh, that could be her writing. Maybe that's pleasurable for her. But this also goes on to say that have a high potential for painful consequences. Her writing aren't going to do that. So I'm going to say, based on DSM-5 criteria and the little bit that I have to go on, that none of this is satisfied and that we don't see any evidence of mania. Therefore, I can believe that persistent depressive disorder, which is that word that I fear pronouncing, dysthymia, please forgive me, could be our diagnosis. Let me also point out that with her husband saying that she had hallucinated, we would want to take a look at schizophrenia. I think it would be wise to do a whole lot of evaluation to decide if schizophrenia was the proper diagnosis. But we would have to have several symptoms for more than a month of delusions and hallucinations, disorganized speech, catatonia, so on and so forth. We're not seeing those. Or the disturbances would have to go on for over 6 months. We're not seeing that. I don't have enough evidence that her hallucinations or any other thing were going on. I could possibly say she had a brief psychotic disorder, because all you need is one of the symptoms for at least 1 day in less than 1 month. Okay, so maybe we could use that as a classifier, brief psychotic disorder. So, once again, we're going to believe that we're going to diagnose Virginia Woolf with persistent depressed disorder, and we're going to say that it's recurrent, and we're going to say that it is severe, and we can use a classifier of brief psychotic disorder. Now, if that is her diagnosis, we need some treatments, of course. We don't want to leave her in this state, and several of the treatments that are usually used with depression would be pharmacological or biomedical. Of course, family treatments would be of use. Let's take a brief look at what we would do with pharmacological. Yapko has helped us understand that the depressants for this, the antidepressants, range from tricyclic antidepressants, serotonin uptake inhibitors, monoamine oxidase inhibitors, and many others. The effectiveness is that they do work. They have been proven to lessen the symptoms of depression. The drawback, Wellman and Angel let us know, is that they are widely prescribed, and pharmaceutical companies are benefiting from them far more than individuals. That's what Wellman and Angel want us to focus on. They point out, very interesting to me, that the government does a lot of the research, but then the farm company makes a lot of the profit. But back to Yapko, he points out that there are a lot of side effects to using your pharmacological drugs. So that would be very true. Now, Yapko also talks about psychotherapy being useful. This would be a psychological treatment. And he says cognitive, behavioral, and interpersonal therapies have been proven effective. And you can deal with the entire family in this approach when you look at the fact that Virginia Woolf did not want to be suffocated. So if you're looking at what psychological treatment could do, then this is what you would use. And the effectiveness, Yapko tells us, is there are lower treatment dropout rates, lower relapse rates, and skills prevention education is utilized. Wiley has a wonderful article about turning happiness into science. And he points out that when you use psychological treatment, you can learn to focus on the upbeat, the positive, and the power we have to make things better. Wiley wants us to know that if we can learn helplessness, we can learn to feel good. The drawback, of course, to psychological treatment is that it can take a long time to work, and you have to really be there and deal with the person on, I believe, a day-to-day basis until they start getting some of this cognitive behavioral treatment into place to work. So that would be a drawback of only using psychological treatment alone. Now, of course, I think in terms of family therapy, and I think that family therapists want to enhance relationship skills, and YAPCO points out that identifying patterns that help families interact and teaching families how to reduce factors that are risky for having depression comes on is really wise. I think this is an effective way to deal with depression, helping the family members work through their problems, because then they have ownership and they have the responsibility to lower the effects of what their behaviors are having on the system. The drawback, YAPCO helps us easily see. Depression runs in families, so it can be biochemical, genetic, hereditary, all of that. And you might need some support for some other treatment options, such as, unfortunately, the drug world. Another drawback is family members frequently don't want to work with each other. They simply will not do it, and they will not do the homework, the day-to-day interaction that they need to when they leave a session. Some of the things I saw in the movie that spoke to this: Virginia Woolf's husband, Leonard Woolf, would frequently say insensitive things to her. The one that I thought was most illuminating was when she went for a walk, which I thought she should do because that was good to get the blood moving around and get her out in the bright sunlight. He said, "If I could walk at mid-morning, I would be a happy man." I believe Leonard has a lot of characteristics of being a caretaker and an enabler, but statements like that is what family therapy would work on Leonard learning to direct it in a different way, and also to be supportive of her doing things for herself that would help her be more upbeat. A little aside, I felt that narrative therapy would speak very well to helping Virginia Woolf with what she saw as society really working against her. For example, she talked about being in a Victorian society, and she talked about being a woman and what that meant for her imprisonment. She talked about how the doctors wanted her to do things, and she didn't have her own choices. But then once again, Leonard Woolf made another one of those comments where he said that society, the printing press was done for her. And in the movie, just the look that Nicole Kidman let the character have for how she responded to that, I think spoke volumes, because I think narrative therapists would really be able to work through how that was supposed to mean love for Virginia Woolf, and it obviously did not fill her up with love. It was a societal demand for a lot of things, like the family needs money to survive, so how are we going to base everything around you to have money? Lastly, a treatment that would be very useful would be the biomedical treatment. These would be electroconvulsive therapy, change in sleep patterns, change in dietary patterns, change in exercise, even having exercise. I think these are very important, and I think YAPCO gives us information about these. I can say that they are effective. They make significant changes. In my own life, I'm allergic to gluten. When I do not do gluten, we have a whole lot more pleasant thoughts and happy upbeat moments. The take a long time for some of the biomedical things to kick in, and learning how to pull oneself into better sleep patterns and better dietary patterns can be a whole lot for a person that's really sad and depressed and already having a hard time pulling through life. To conclude by restating that I believe Virginia Woolf has a persistent depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, and that I believe the best treatment that can be used is starting her off on some antidepressants, but using family therapy with some really good inner workings of some biomedical treatment. Probably some CBT thrown in. And then I think we see some success for her. Thank you very much for listening to our